The whole idea was just to get heroin each day and just to get through the day. I was a dead person inside, mentally, emotionally. I couldn't feel anything at all.
Heroin took away all the uncomfortable feelings at first, but that was really, really short-lived to the point where I was just dead.
And like, no matter how much I worked, no matter how much money I had, it just was never enough, and it just took everything from me, and I had nothing to show for it, but a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and like, people just didn't want anything to do with me.
And I mean, I tried to stop, I told myself that I'm going to stop, but you tell yourself you're going to stop, but you don't get so far, you don't get to that point.
Until I've reached that point where, you know, you just don't want to do it anymore. You know, you keep on telling yourself, you go buy the drugs and telling yourself you don't want to do it anymore. But yet you do it.
I was just planning through the day, where am I going to get my next fix?
This week we look at drug addiction, particularly so-called street drugs. Our characters, Clint, Nizam, Jazza, Melissa, Michael and Leroy openly discuss childhood experiences through the progression of their illness, the torment of addiction, and ultimately the liberation of recovery.
I was born in Zimbabwe, then I moved to South Africa when I was 2, and my parents got separated, and that's when my mom moved to Joburg. And me and my brother decided to stay with my father. Kind of started rebelling quite a bit, started getting into fights and stuff at school, and my mom tried to kidnap me.
I'm from Birmingham, I'm from England. I'm the youngest of 3 children. My brother he's 12 years older than me, and my sister's 10 years older than me. So growing up, I kind of didn't know what my place was in the family dynamic. I thought I was a mistake, as I wasn't planned, and pretty much spent my entire life thinking, that I shouldn't be here. But I do come from a really, really loving family.
I was born in a very traditional Sikh family. Loads of cousins, extended family. I've got 2 older sisters, but a lot of cousins and uncles. Family were always around. And generally my upbringing was very happy. I was never really alone. I was shown a lot of love.
Well, I grew up in Woodstock. I stayed there for 23 years. And the background there for me was like, it's a bit of a gangster background. So the things that I had to do there through my daily life, I had to like join a member of gangs to protect myself. Well, I don't have actually any against my family, because everything was good in my family.
If you grow up in a society where addiction is rife, if there's little social support, unemployment, poverty, those are things that can make you more vulnerable, make you at higher risk.
Started drinking at the age of 13 in the park with people from school. At the age of 16, I took my first ecstasy, and I can remember thinking, this is it. Like, I found what I'm looking for. But it made me feel very confident. At the age of 22, 23, I took heroin for the first time, and it all went downhill from there.
My addiction started when I was at a young age. I was like 11 years old. And then I was introduced to weed, cannabis.
I don't remember this, but I got told at 9 years old, I was stealing alcohol from the table.
I must have been about 15. We went to a wedding, and then a cousin says, I'll have a can of this. And I think he mixed it with some lemonade to make a shandy. And over the weekend, the lemonade got less and less, and the beer got stronger and stronger.
I left school at 6. I started working on the tow trucks, and because I started working like on a weekend basis, the one buddy of mine said, come on, you must try this, just one hit, and I mean, that's where it started, one hit.
It all started at high school, where, you know, you see your friends doing it and you want to be in the group. Smoking slow boats, From there, the dacha like this, I went into the pipe, smoked it from the pipe. From there, you add a bit of krag, soos hulle sê.
And then I started using in the week. While I was in school, before I had to go to school, I had to start using. I got introduced to ecstasy by going one night to a big party. The first time I tried it, it was like, the best feeling, you know. It was like, I felt like the most happiest person on earth. Heroin was just quite good also. It put me more like in a mellow state, you know. If I was stressed out, I could use heroin and just ease back. Because I'm using, but I'm using just to feel normal. Because I wasn't getting any more buzz out of the using. I became self-centered, obsessed with myself. In my mind constantly was just saying, I need to stop, I need to stop.
Well, just smoking marijuana was like I was at university. How people go to the pub every day, we would smoke cannabis every day, smoke ganja every day. And then it became, I was smoking it first thing in the morning and at lunchtime and throughout the day. And then one day you go to a party and you're offered something different, like amphetamine, speed. Later on, cocaine came into it. And then eventually I was introduced to heroin. And once I found that one, then to me at the time, nothing else mattered.
I was in a very abusive relationship when I first started using, and it kind of drowned him out. And that's when my crack addiction really took hold, because that was when I felt alive, was to have a hit of the pipe and feel the buzz and just to check, yes, I'm still alive. 22, 23, I took heroin for the first time.
You might have the biological tendency, you might feel depressed and take some of it, or you might feel anxious, or you might be in the circles where people take drugs recreationally, and then the combination of all three of them get together, and then you, at that stage, might just be vulnerable to develop a dependency.
From the age of 12, I experimented with a whole bunch of other drugs, petrol, benzene, thinners, marijuana, alcohol, ecstasy, LSD, cocaine, crack. The first time I really realized that I had a serious problem, I started chasing heroin, and I was working in a bar, running a bar, so I always had my supply of drugs there. I used up all my money, I used to steal, and after 2 years of using heroin, the one day, for some reason, there was no heroin in town. And for the first time ever, I experienced withdrawals. And it's like, that's all I could think about. It's like, if I just have my next hit, I'll feel better.
In any individual person, that line when you cross over from being a user to an abuser to an addict, it's not a very clear line. Really what it comes down to is that drug affecting your life in negative ways, and are you continuing to use in the way that you do despite that?
So you put the Mandex in there, and from there, with that we do ecstasy, and then from there we went to cocaine, and then I snuffed it, and then afterwards I did the rock cocaine. From there, you can't actually afford it anymore, so you start going to this cheap drugs.
I went to my family and I told them, and it devastated them, totally devastated them. My mum got me through a really bad withdrawal. She stayed up with me day and night, massaging me, getting me in and out of hot baths. And then to repay them for that kindness, I went and scored less than 2 weeks later. Life was really bad, and my family were starting to pick up on things, but an addict, I'm really good at lying. I'm very dishonest when I'm using. I manipulate them. I'm aggressive with them. I bully them into giving me money. I steal from people. I steal from really vulnerable people. I steal from the people who love me the most. My house was being repossessed, and eventually my brother-in-law said to me, you're killing your dad. You're pushing your dad further into the grave. He's had a heart attack, he's had a stroke because of me.
Yeah, there was quite a few consequences. Yeah. I lost this job because of coming late. But I wasn't actually late at the work. I was there early, but I was normally always in the bathroom using drugs. I used to get caught up in many fights with my little brother. The trust, that was my first thing that fell away with my family. Whenever my family, parents and my brother and sister used to go out, maybe to have dinner or supper by their family, friends, they had to lock me out because they wouldn't trust me being alone in the house. They started hating me. There was a time when they gave hope up on me. And this was all things that made me realize that I should come out. I was into shoplifting. I was into piracy. I was stealing. And then there was a time where I actually conned people, like sell them fake stuff, just to get the hurry going because I was so focused on using.
The normal consequences, I used to get into fights and sometimes I'd have blackouts, and you get up the next morning and I've got cuts and bruises, and I used to get very violent as well. I've hurt people. Because of the drugs as well, my stomach shrank, my appetite completely went, so I couldn't eat. My skin was all black, my eyes are still black. I didn't know what spiritual meant, didn't know what love meant, couldn't express love. 22 jobs later, a broken nose, shattered cheek. And then obviously there's the relationships as well with the family and friends. So I was alone.
Like when I was younger, obviously I was more social with my friends. At a later stage, it was just me and my drugs and my substances. In a normal day for me, would just be waking up in the morning, going through cold turkey, and just one thing on my mind, and having to get my drug to function, because only once I got my drug, then I'd be all right. Sometimes I had to turn to crime, stole from my father, I stole his credit cards, bank cards, forged his checks, go into a nightclub, steal a handbag, steal cell phones, break into houses, whatever it took to get my drugs. I've put my family through hell. Like my dad getting phone calls from the hospital telling him that I've overdosed, from jails. It was terrible because these people I really cared about and I loved them, but the things that I was doing, it made me feel like a terrible person.
With the rise of illegal drugs like methamphetamine, which has such devastating consequences for society, and heroin addiction, I think we have become much more aware of them. Families are destroyed by alcohol, but they ripped apart by something like methamphetamine addiction, and maybe that's why it's more in the news, and why society has become more aware of it.
People were telling me that I was going to my father's way, My father was also not a drug user, but he was with alcohol.
If you have an addict or an alcoholic, there's a strong possibility somewhere in their family, the adults that they modeled themselves on, there would be some addictive behavior or some dysfunction.
When you reach the point of addiction, it's recognized by repetitive and compulsive substance use, usually, even despite horrendous and significantly negative consequences for the person, and an inability to really control that.
It took me about 4 months before I finally realised that I was addicted to heroin, between 4 and 6 months. And from that point, I tried to give up. So for 8.5 years, I tried to give up using heroin and just couldn't do it on my own. I had no hope. I think there must have been some sort of hope that life could be different for me, because all I wanted to do was die, but I didn't take my own life. I mean, I would go to sleep praying that I wouldn't wake up again, and be devastated when I did wake up and have to face the same thing day in, day out. But I remember the day when I'd picked up again and I was in the pawn shop pawning up my stuff again, and I just saw there is no hope. I am incapable of staying clean, and that was the moment where I felt totally shattered. And then within a few days I was on a plane out here. So I'm really glad that I got to that point when I did. Who knows, maybe I could have gone on using for longer.
For me, I got so fed up that I actually accepted and surrendered completely to my addiction.
Went to the pub, had 4 pints of Guinness as breakfast, started playing pool, scored some drugs, and used and drank all day, and then went home at 3, 4 o'clock, and I'm upstairs using. I heard the front door open, and it was my elder sister. She was running up the stairs, so I quickly hid the drugs under the bed, and she says, "Oh, come downstairs." So I went downstairs, and the whole family were there, and I received what you call an intervention. Basically, this says we know you've got a problem, and we're offering help, and this is a chance in a lifetime, and go to treatment. I burst out crying. I was scared, really, really scared, and that was it. Within half an hour, I'd packed whatever clean clothes I had, and I went to treatment.
I got a phone call saying that my little brother's also a drug addict, and he almost killed my mom. He stabbed her like 5 times, punctured her lungs, in a psychosis and stuff like that. My mom's in hospital, she's almost dead. And my brother called me from England and said to me that he doesn't want to go through this alone. Can I come up here? And obviously trying to be the good brother, I'm like, okay, cool, I'm there, Yeah, so I came down to Cape Town. My little brother was in jail, my mom was in hospital, and my brother was here. And all I could think about was you know what, I just want to go to my dealer and go get high. I tried to come clean. I took the medication, but then I just ended up shooting up the medication. And I was just using so much drugs that the medication just did nothing for me. Because I've been through so many treatment centres. I've been through this, for over 11 years. And I just know that I can't do this on my own. And that's when I came into treatment. And I think that's where I had the assistance, is through the willingness to actually want to help myself. And my brother, I think my brother, and then they know me. They know the real Clint and the person that I am. Otherwise, they wouldn't have stuck with me through all of this. I've put my family through hell.
I lost my job. I told myself, when I get a next job, I'm going to quit. And then I went for this job. And I was celebrating with a lolly in my hand. And then that morning, when I went there, to my surprise, they actually asked me to go for the drug test. I had nothing. My mother wanted to throw me out as well. She was sick and tired of me. My wife, we separated, and I could see how I hurt my kids, man. And I lay there for 2-3 days. I had enough, man. I just couldn't get up. I never even ate, you know what I'm saying?
For 8.5 years, I tried to stop. I've tried methadone, I've tried Subutex. I went to see my GP. I got drug tested on a weekly basis. I had a key worker, but it wasn't enough. I've found sobriety, and what's kept me clean is a 12-step fellowship. It started in rehab. The facility that I was in introduced me to meetings. I know that it's a core of my program. If I don't go to meetings, I'm not going to stay clean. And it's where all my friends are. Cape Town has the most amazing fellowship.
When I had enough of my addiction, I felt actually like it was a whole relief. I always wanted to get clean and to learn to live life clean. I had to come clean at home. I had to do it at home. And I didn't go to a treatment center or facility. I had to do it through these rooms, this 12-step program. And my next door neighbor was a merchant, a drug dealer, and he was selling my drug of choice, and I had to get clean through that. I had to change the ways of my footsteps, the way I come out of my house in the morning. Because when I came out of my front door, I always used to turn left. And now when I walk out of my front door, I always turn right. It wasn't hard for me because, like I said, I accepted and I surrendered. I had to deal with the problems. So I had to face that fear, and I had to deal with the problem at home.
I packed up a suitcase and I went to a place in Gloucester, 12-step recovery-based program. There I met other addicts and alcoholics. Initially it was painful. I just remember the physical pain of withdrawing and going through withdrawals. What amazed me was the other people, fellow sufferers of this illness we have, and how we pulled each other through. My hunger came back, met people in rehab that I would never have met before. And then I obviously was taught about addiction and why I drank and the powerlessness, and suddenly my mind started waking up.
My brother's the one that brought me into treatment here that day, and he supported me. He paid for my treatment this time around. I don't come from a wealthy family, and I've been into like 15 treatment centres in my life. Most of those treatment centres I've never paid for, and don't ask me how it's happened, but if it hadn't happened, you know, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair. And I think I've just been through a process of a lot of pain and trying to do it myself. I just got to a place where it's like I'm just tired of being bankrupt. This time around, I mean, it was terrible. The medication wasn't working. I wanted to leave every single day because I just wanted to feel better, you know, because I was in so much pain and I wasn't sleeping. I just knew that what? I'm gonna jump over the wall and go get high, and then what? You know, my life is great today. It's the longest I've ever been clean. It's not easy though, having to learn things that I should have learned when I was 12 years old, coping skills and being guided, where I've been so used to like my drugs being my solution for everything. Through my process, I've developed a support network of very close friends, which is vital for me. Without that support, you know, I don't think that I would be clean, you know.
For me, there's two things. There's a connection with a higher power, and then there's practicing spiritual principles. And I think, you know, from the moment that I got clean, I tried my best to practice spiritual principles. Not all of them came quickly. Honesty was progress. You know, I wasn't honest from day one. But the connection that I have with a higher power has been like a roller coaster. Some days it was quite strong, and other days it wasn't there at all. And now this gift that I have is this constant, deep connection. I can't explain it. It's very personal and quite emotional for me, and it's new, and it's very exciting.
The friends and the connections I've made since then have been amazing. And also, you know, stuff like the spiritual side as well, just admiring nature, hearing birds sing in the morning. The change was quite amazing. The emotion started coming back as well. I come from a Sikh family. We were just taught the basics of like there's one God, He loves us, and that He's there for you. When I reconcile that back to the spirituality and recovery, it's very similar.
Like the things that I've learned is that I had to always do the opposites of what I did in my active behavior. Today I'm doing things that I've never done, like in the past. You know, I'm doing hikes, I'm climbing up mountains, I'm looking at sunsets, sunrises, which is the most beautiful thing. What I've learned, the best part of being spiritual is, you know, learning the things that you have in recovery and taking it out into the outside world today. And that for me is like helping still suffering people, you know. My relationship with my parents and my friends today is fantastic. I can be a real son towards my mom and my dad. I can be a brother to my brother. I can be a brother to my sister. The 12-step program, all the steps, like from 1 to 12, is the same principles like in the Quran or in the Bible. It's exactly the same because you learn to become humble, you learn to be spiritual. Each step is spiritual.
We helped the person to heal physically, in terms of their addiction, in terms of their dysfunction, in terms of their broken relationships, but heal their spirituality, the foundations, the roots, so that they can begin to live more honestly and openly and with integrity.
There's an actual disease of the body and mind over which one can take control spiritually. I mean, that's astonishing.
I think just to quieten the mind. The mind still plays tricks sometimes. And ultimately just to stay clean and not drink again, not use again for the rest of my life, one day at a time.
I'd like to have balance, all-round balance in my life. You know, because my life's just been out of balance and out of sync.
And the message that I would give, it would be a message of hope, of course, because I remember when I came first time to these rooms, to these meetings, I got a strong message of hope.
Go and ask for that help and see people who were there not so long ago.
There is a way out. Are you willing? Has the pain got enough?
Don't wait. Go to a meeting. Just go. Even if you've used, just go. The power of the group, the power of the fellowship, that will help them to get clean and stay clean. And there's hope. If I can do it, believe me, anybody can do it.
Next week, we continue focusing on the subject of drug addiction. Our characters will give in-depth personal accounts of their lives before, during, and after substance addiction. Our hope is that after watching these programs, anyone affected by the consequences of addiction, be it the addict themselves, family members, friends, work colleagues, and communities at large, will better understand addiction and be able to make informed decisions regarding seeking help, advice, counseling, and support.
Thank you.